Good morning, or good afternoon, or perhaps good evening if you're pulling an all-nighter. Whatever the time, chances are you might be feeling a certain way. Maybe a little groggy, a tad sluggish, or perhaps just not quite you yet. And if you're like billions of people across this magnificent planet, there's one simple, dark, aromatic solution that you turn to. A solution that promises clarity, energy, and the sweet, sweet reprieve from the clutches of the morning slump. We are, of course, talking about coffee. Welcome back to What Is, the channel dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of the everyday and the extraordinary. Today we're diving headfirst into a journey that spans centuries, continents, and the very chemistry within our brains. We're going to ask what exactly is coffee, and more importantly, how does this humble bean manage to drag us, sometimes kicking and screaming, into the land of the wide awake? From dancing goats to bustling boardrooms, coffee's story is a rich brew of legend, science, and cultural revolution. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and let's awaken our minds to the incredible narrative of coffee. Discovery, the dancing goats, or so the story goes. Our story begins, as many good stories do, with a legend. Picture this, the ancient highlands of Ethiopia. Sometime around the 9th century, a goat herder named Kaldi is tending his flock. A fairly mundane existence, one might imagine. Until that is, his goats start acting unusually. They weren't just grazing. Oh no, they were practically having a rave. Leaping, prancing, bleating, with an unprecedented zest for life. Kaldi, puzzled and probably a little amused, observed them munching on the bright red berries of a particular evergreen shrub. Curiosity, being the mother of all invention, and sometimes the instigator of extremely caffeinated goats, got the better of him, and he tried the berries himself. Now, whether Kaldi was experiencing a sudden urge to perform interpretive dance with his livestock, we can only guess. But what he did experience was a surge of energy, a newfound alertness that chased away his daily fatigue. He was quite literally wide awake. Kaldi shared his discovery with the abbot of the local monastery. Initially, the abbot was less than impressed. He declared the berries to be the devil's work and tossed them into a fire. But as the story goes, the roasting beans produced an irresistible aroma, drawing the monks back. They raked the embers, ground the roasted beans, and dissolved them into hot water, creating the world's first accidental cup of coffee. They found that drinking this beverage helped them stay awake during long hours of prayer. While the dancing goats legend is, well, legendary, historical evidence suggests that coffee cultivation and consumption did indeed originate in Ethiopia, specifically in the Kaffa region, which coincidentally sounds a lot like coffee. It wasn't just a drink, it was a discovery that would profoundly alter human history. Development, from ancient brew to global bean. From its Ethiopian roots, coffee began its slow, deliberate march across the globe. By the 15th century, it had traveled across the Red Sea to Yemen, where its cultivation truly took hold. Here, Sufi mystics found it invaluable for their spiritual practices, allowing them to remain vigilant and focused during extended periods of meditation and prayer. It wasn't just a pick-me-up, it was a tool for transcendence. The method of preparation evolved too, no longer just raw berries or a rustic brew. The Yemenis began drying, husking, roasting, and grinding the beans, then boiling them in water, a process not too far removed from what we do today. They called the drink kwawa, meaning wine of the bean. From Yemen, coffee embarked on its grand tour, spreading throughout the Arabian Peninsula, Mecca, then Cairo, and by the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire had fully embraced coffee. Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, became a bustling hub of coffee culture. Coffee houses, known as kava canes, began to spring up like mushrooms after the rain. These weren't just places to grab a quick drink. These were vibrant social centers, places where men gathered to discuss politics, play games, recite poetry, and of course enjoy a stimulating cup of coffee. They were the original social media platforms, the precursors to internet forums, bustling with intellectual debate and lively conversation. People weren't just exchanging pleasantries, they were exchanging ideas, fueled by the very beverage we're discussing. The very success of these coffee houses, however, sometimes made rulers nervous. They worried that such gatherings fostered sedition and dissent. In fact, there were several attempts to ban coffee throughout history, often by religious or political authorities who saw it as potentially subversive. Imagine a simple drink causing such a stir. Thankfully, the allure of coffee and the profits it generated proved too strong to suppress for long. Cultural impact through time, the Age of Enlightenment and beyond. The 17th century marked coffee's grand entrance into Europe. Venetian traders, already well versed in exotic goods, introduced coffee to Italy. Again, initially there was resistance. Some Catholic clergymen denounced it as the bitter invention of Satan. But Pope Clement VIII, a man clearly ahead of his time, tasted it, declared it so delicious that it would be a shame to let the infidels have exclusive use of it, and in a brilliant marketing move, blessed it. Coffee was officially sanctified. From Venice, coffee spread like wildfire across the continent. London's first coffee house opened in 1652, and within decades, hundreds more followed. These penny universities, as they were called given the price of a cup, became intellectual hotbeds. Enlightenment thinkers, scientists, writers, and politicians gathered in these smoky, stimulating environments, exchanging ideas, debating philosophies, and quite literally, brewing revolutions. It's no coincidence that many of the radical ideas that shaped the modern world, from the scientific method to democratic principles, were frequently discussed and refined over cups of coffee. People were trading ale for coffee, swapping the dulling effects of alcohol for the sharpening clarity of caffeine. Imagine the sheer volume of groundbreaking thought that might have been lost to history if everyone had simply stuck to the meat. Coffee even played a tangential but amusing role in American history. While we often focus on the taxation of tea leading to the Boston Tea Party, it's worth noting that the subsequent boycott of tea significantly boosted coffee consumption in the colonies. So in a way, coffee helped fuel a revolution. Take that, King George. By the 18th and 19th centuries, coffee cultivation had expanded globally, with European colonial powers establishing massive plantations in places like Brazil, Colombia, and Indonesia. This expansion, while making coffee more accessible, also has a complex and often dark history, tied to forced labor and exploitation. It's a reminder that even beloved commodities carry the weight of their origins. By the dawn of the 20th century, coffee was no longer just a luxury or an intellectual stimulant, it was a staple. The invention of percolation brewers, vacuum brewers, and eventually drip coffee machines made it accessible for everyday home consumption. The aroma of brewing coffee became synonymous with the start of a new day, a ritual woven into the very fabric of daily life. The science of caffeine, the brain's wake-up call. But how does this dark, magical liquid actually wake us up? It all comes down to a remarkable molecule called caffeine, the world's most widely consumed psychoactive substance. And it's doing some pretty clever things inside your head right now. To understand caffeine, we first need to understand adenosine. Adenosine is a neurotransmitter that plays a crucial role in our sleep-wake cycle. Throughout the day, as our brain burns away energy, adenosine levels steadily increase. Think of it as a biological timer, signaling to your brain that it's time to slow down, conserve energy, and eventually go to sleep. Adenosine binds to specific receptors in your brain, essentially telling your neurons to quiet down. This leads to feelings of drowsiness and fatigue. Now here's where caffeine makes its grand entrance. Caffeine is what scientists call an adenosine receptor antagonist. In plain English, it's a molecular impersonator. Caffeine's molecular structure is incredibly similar to adenosine's. So similar, in fact, it can fit perfectly into those adenosine receptors in your brain. When caffeine binds to these receptors, it doesn't activate them like adenosine does. Instead, it just sits there, blocking the adenosine from doing its job. Think of it like putting gum in a lock. The key, adenosine, can't get in, so the door, your drowsiness, can't be opened. With adenosine blocked, your brain's natural slowing down signals are suppressed. This doesn't directly add energy, rather it removes the chemical brakes on your existing energy systems. Other stimulating neurotransmitters, like dopamine and norepinephrine, which might normally be inhibited by adenosine, are now free to run wild, leading to increased alertness, focus, and even improved mood. It's like the brain's internal rave is back on, but this time, you're invited. Caffeine also has another trick up its sleeve. By interacting with certain receptors, it can cause your adrenal glands to release adrenaline, the fight or flight hormone. This further contributes to that feeling of heightened alertness, increased heart rate, and improved physical performance. You're not just awake, you're ready to wrestle a bear, or at least tackle that enormous spreadsheet. The effects typically kick in within 15 to 45 minutes of consumption, and can last for several hours depending on individual metabolism. When the caffeine eventually leaves your system, all that pent-up adenosine that's been waiting patiently suddenly rushes in to bind to its receptors. This sudden onslaught is what we often experience as the dreaded caffeine crash, leaving you feeling more tired than before you had your first cup. It's your brain finally catching up, demanding its overdue rest. It's also why you build up a tolerance. Regular caffeine consumption leads to your brain to create more adenosine receptors to compensate for the blocked ones. This means you need more caffeine to achieve the same stimulating effect. It's a vicious, yet delicious, cycle. The role in modern society, the global cult of coffee. Today, coffee isn't just a drink, it's a global phenomenon, a cornerstone of modern life, and a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's the world's second most traded commodity after oil, impacting economies, cultures, and daily routines across every continent. In many parts of the world, particularly in Western societies, coffee has become an indispensable part of the morning ritual. The sound of the grinder, the gurgle of the maker, the rich aroma wafting through the kitchen. It's the universal call to action. It's an unofficial alarm clock for millions, a gentle nudge, or sometimes a forceful shove into productivity. Coffee shops, once gathering places for intellectuals, have evolved into ubiquitous social anchors. From the bustling Starbucks on every corner to the independent artisanal roasters, meticulously crafting single-origin pour-overs, cafes serve as third spaces. Not home, not work, but a comfortable locale for connection, casual meetings, or focused individual work. They are extensions of our living rooms and offices, places where friendships blossom, deals are struck, and deadlines are met. Globally, coffee embodies vast cultural diversity. In Italy, it's a quick, strong espresso taken standard at a bar. In Turkey, a thick, potent brew served with fortune-telling grounds. In Nordic countries, where consumption rates are among the highest, it's a constant companion through long, dark winters. In Latin America, it's often a social gesture, an offering of hospitality. Beyond personal consumption, coffee fuels economies. Millions of people worldwide depend on coffee cultivation for their livelihoods. From the farmers painstakingly tending their crops in the coffee belt regions, to the roasters, baristas, and exporters, coffee supports an immense global workforce. It's a testament to the power of this humble bean that it can command such an intricate and vast supply chain. And in our increasingly demanding 24/7 world, coffee remains our steadfast ally. It helps students cram for exams, artists find inspiration, developers debug code, and parents simply survive the toddler years. It's the silent partner in countless achievements and the comforting presence during quiet moments of contemplation. From the legendary dancing goats of Ethiopia to the complex chemical dance within our brains, coffee's journey is truly remarkable. It's a tale of accidental discovery, relentless development, and profound cultural integration. It has been a source of spiritual awakening, intellectual revolution, and everyday sustenance. So the next time you hold that warm mug, savoring the rich aroma and feeling that familiar surge of alertness, take a moment to appreciate the incredible journey this simple beverage has undergone. It's more than just a drink, it's a legacy, a global ritual, and for many of us, it's the essential catalyst that allows us to engage with the world, one glorious, caffeinated sip at a time. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of coffee. If you learned something new, or if this video simply gave you an excuse to brew another cup, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to What Is for more explorations into the fascinating things that shape our world, and let us know in the comments what's your go-to coffee order. Thanks for watching, and stay curious. Hello and welcome back to What Is, the show where we dive deep into the everyday marvels and mysteries shaping our world. Today we're dissecting a device that's so ubiquitous, so deeply woven into the fabric of daily life that it's almost become an extension of ourselves. We're talking, of course, about the smartphone, and more importantly, we're asking, what exactly is a smartphone, and how did this pocket-sized powerhouse fundamentally change the way we communicate? Now, before we get too technical, let's set the scene. Imagine, if you will, a time not so long ago, a distant, almost mythological era when phones had physical buttons, cameras were separate devices you actually carried, and finding your way somewhere involved a printed map, or, if you were really adventurous, asking for directions. But then, something revolutionary happened. So first things first, what is a smartphone? At its core, a smartphone is a mobile phone built on a mobile operating system, with significantly more advanced computing capabilities and connectivity than a feature phone. Think of it as a tiny, highly specialized personal computer that happens to make phone calls. It's not just about the calling though. Oh no. That's like saying a supercar is just for getting from A to B. A smartphone brings together a whole host of functionalities that used to require multitudes of separate gadgets. We're talking about a camera, a video recorder, a music player, a GPS navigation system, a calendar, an alarm clock, a web browser, an email client, a gaming console, a flashlight, a calculator, a document scanner, and yes, a device for making phone calls. All in one sleek, often glass-backed rectangle that fits in your hand, or if you're particularly brave, your back pocket. The secret sauce that makes all of this possible is the operating system, primarily Apple's iOS or Google's Android. These aren't just behind-the-scenes code, they're the entire ecosystem. They allow developers to create apps, short for applications, which are essentially purpose-built software programs that expand your phone's capabilities almost infinitely. Want to order a pizza? There's an app for that. Want to identify a constellation? App. Want to learn a new language while simultaneously tracking your steps and arguing with strangers about pineapple on pizza? You bet there's an app, or 7 for that. Early ancestors of the smartphone weren't quite as elegant, of course. We had devices like IBM's Simon in 1994, which was less of a phone and more of a brick with a touchscreen, a PDA, and a hefty price tag. Then came the Palm Pilots and early Blackberries, with their iconic physical keyboards beloved by business folk for their email capabilities. They were smart-ish phones. They did more than just call, but they weren't seamlessly intuitive multimedia powerhouses we know today. They were like the black and white silent films of the smartphone world, groundbreaking for their time, but a little clunky by modern standards. Alright, so we've defined our hero. Now let's rewind to that pre-smartphone era and remember just how different communication used to be. For many of us it feels like ancient history, but it's really just a blink of the eye in technological progress. Before the smartphone, if you wanted to talk to someone, you primarily had two options. Call them on their landline, which meant they had to be home and answer the phone, or call them on their mobile, which might have been a flip phone with questionable reception and battery life measured in days, not hours. Texting existed, yes, but it was a laborious affair. Remember T9 predictive text? Where you had to press the 7 key 3 times to get an R? And if you wanted to capitalize a letter, that was another whole dance. Sending a simple "How are you?" felt like deciphering the Rosetta Stone. Email was generally tethered to a desktop computer, perhaps running through the glorious screech of a dial-up modem, which meant you checked it once or twice a day, like a ritual. Instant messaging programs like AIM or MSN Messenger offered real-time text chats, but again, you were mostly confined to your computer desk, probably avoiding chores and definitely getting yelled at to "Get off the internet, I need to make a call." Communication was largely asynchronous. You'd leave a voicemail, send an email, or write a letter. Remember those? And then you'd wait, and wait. The expectation of an immediate response wasn't just lower, it was practically non-existent. Planning a meetup involved phone calls, often several, to confirm times, places, and what everyone would bring. Spontaneity was a luxury, almost a magical occurrence. If you were running late, tough luck. You just were late. You'd maybe find a payphone if you were desperate and lucky enough to have change. Payphones. They sound like mythical relics now, don't they? Like a landline, but for public use, and sometimes smelling faintly of desperation and stale cigarettes. This was the communication landscape. Slower, more deliberate, and requiring a bit more effort. And then, the meteor hit. The iPhone landed in 2007, and soon after, Android devices began to proliferate. And everything, and I mean everything, changed. The iPhone, with its multi-touch display and intuitive interface, wasn't just another gadget. It was a paradigm shift. It wasn't the first smartphone, but it was the first to make the smartphone desirable and genuinely easy to use for the average person. Suddenly we had a powerful computer in our pockets, controlled by the simplest interface of all, our fingers. No longer did we need a stylus or a tiny keyboard. The screen was the keyboard. The screen was the interface. And crucially, it introduced the App Store, a revolutionary concept that unlocked an entire universe of possibilities. Suddenly your phone wasn't just a tool, it was a customizable, infinitely expandable platform. Android followed swiftly, bringing similar capabilities to a wider range of devices and price points, truly democratizing the smartphone. These devices weren't just making existing forms of communication easier, they were inventing entirely new ones. So how did this seismic shift unfold? How did the smartphone change communication? Let's break it down. First, and perhaps the most obvious, was the explosion of instantaneous multimedia communication. Before, sending a photo involved emailing it from your computer, or perhaps, if you were feeling retro, printing it out and mailing it. Now, snap a picture, tap a button, and it's halfway across the world in seconds. A video of your cat doing something adorable? Instantly shared. A voice note to your friend explaining something complicated? No problem. The ability to seamlessly integrate text, images, video, and audio into a single conversation stream meant our interactions became richer, more expressive, and utterly immediate. Then came the rise of social media and messaging apps. While platforms like Facebook existed before smartphones, it was mobile access that supercharged them. Suddenly, you weren't just checking your feed at home, you were connected 24/7. Apps like WhatsApp, Messenger, WeChat, and eventually Instagram and TikTok created entirely new ecosystems for communication. Group chats became the new town square, where family dramas played out, friendships were forged, and an endless stream of memes flowed. The idea of messaging someone without knowing their phone number became commonplace. You just needed their username. This led to global connectivity on an unprecedented scale. No longer were you tethered by long-distance charges or time zones in the same way. A video call to a friend on the other side of the planet became as easy as a call to your neighbor. Families separated by continents could now see each other's faces, share daily moments, and genuinely feel closer. News from anywhere in the world could reach your pocket instantly, unfiltered by traditional gatekeepers. For better or for worse, we became citizens of a truly global village. The smartphone also brought about a revolution in emergency communication and personal safety. A lost hiker can share their GPS coordinates. A person in distress can silently text for help. Apps can locate loved ones or send out alerts. The phone, once just a communication device, became a crucial safety tool, always within reach. And let's not forget about accessibility. For individuals with disabilities, smartphones have opened up new avenues for communication and independence. Screen readers, voice control, haptic feedback, and specialized apps allow people to interact with the world and connect with others in ways that were previously unimaginable. It's a powerful equalizer. But, like any monumental shift, there is a flip side. The smartphone's impact on communication isn't without its challenges, and dare I say, sometimes its comedic pitfalls. For one, there's the scourge of information overload and constant availability. Remember that asynchronous communication, the waiting? Well, now that it's gone, we live in an always-on culture. The expectation of immediate responses has become the norm. That little notification ping, chime, or buzz can pull you out of focus, demand your attention, and contribute to a feeling of being constantly overwhelmed. Our brains, it turns out, weren't quite designed for this incessant digital deluge. Many of us suffer from phantom vibration syndrome, convinced our phone is buzzing when it actually isn't. It's like our brains are craving the next hit of digital interaction. Then there's the subtle, yet significant erosion of face-to-face communication. The term phubbing, snubbing someone in favor of your phone, is now a recognized social faux pas. Group gatherings often feature multiple people staring into their screens, half listening, half scrolling. While we're more connected globally, are we less connected locally? It's a question worth pondering as we tap away at our glowing rectangles. Misinterpretation is another big one. Text-based communication devoid of tone, body language, or facial expressions is a minefield for misunderstanding. A perfectly innocent text can be read with sarcasm, anger, or indifference, leading to unnecessary drama. Emojis help, but they're still just little cartoon faces trying to convey the nuances of human emotion. K, just K, is that an affirmation or a dismissal? The existential dread of K. And who can forget autocorrect fails, a classic source of accidental hilarity, and sometimes outright horror. What was meant to be a polite inquiry about ducks turns into something far more colourful. Our phones, in their infinite wisdom, try to predict our intentions, sometimes with disastrously funny results. The smartphone also creates a certain addiction. The constant dopamine hit from likes, comments, and messages can be intoxicating. We spend hours scrolling, refreshing, and engaging, often at the expense of sleep, productivity, or real-world interactions. The fear of missing out, or FOMO, is a very real consequence of being constantly plugged into everyone else's highlight reel. Finally, there's the privacy paradox. We willingly share more and more of our lives, our locations, our thoughts, and our purchasing habits with these devices and the companies that operate their software and services. The convenience of instant communication comes with the trade-off of giving up significant amounts of personal data. The call is coming from inside the house becomes the data is coming from inside your pocket. So where does that leave us? The smartphone isn't just a phone. It's a personal portal to the world. It's a communication superhighway, a media hub, an information repository, and a constant companion. It has democratized access to information and connection, allowing us to share our lives, collaborate across distances, and react to events in real time like never before. It has broken down barriers of distance and time, making our world smaller and more connected. However, it has also introduced new challenges. The relentless pace of digital communication, the blurring lines between public and private, and the potential for digital distraction are all ongoing conversations we are having as a society. What's next? Probably more integration. Our phones are already talking to our smartwatches, our cars, our home appliances. They're becoming even more intelligent, anticipating our needs and perhaps even understanding our unspoken desires. Voice assistants are getting smarter. Augmented reality is blurring the lines between digital and physical, and soon, maybe our phones will simply project our calls directly onto our brains using tiny, invisible laser beams. Or maybe they'll just become even more addictive squares of glass. Regardless of where they go, one thing is clear. The smartphone has done more than just change communication. It has fundamentally reshaped human interaction, our understanding of connection, and indeed the very fabric of modern life. From the laborious text messages of flip phones to instantaneous video calls across continents, we've come a long way, and we're still just getting started. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the smartphone and its communicative revolution. What do you think is the biggest communication change brought about by the smartphone? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to What Is for more fascinating explorations, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time. Welcome back to What Is, where we take the mundane things in your life and peel back the layers until we find the existential dread or the scientific wonder underneath. Today we're talking about the star of the show, the MVP of your junk drawer, the material that's currently holding your phone together, keeping your milk fresh, and statistically speaking, probably floating around in your bloodstream right now. We're talking about plastic. Look around you. I mean it. Stop looking at the screen for a second. Unless you're sitting stark naked in the middle of a virgin forest, and if you are, weird flex, but okay, you're surrounded by plastic. The keys on your keyboard, plastic. The insulation in your walls, plastic. That organic polyester blend shirt, well, surprise, the blend is wearable plastic. But what actually is it? Is it a liquid, a solid, a gift from the gods of convenience, or a curse from the pits of chemical engineering? Today we're breaking down the history, the science, the tragedy, and the potential future of the world's most versatile material. So what is plastic? At its most basic scientific level, plastic is a polymer. Now don't let that word scare you. Poly means many, and mer means parts. So many parts. Think of it like a chain of paper clips. Each paperclip is a monomer, a single molecule. When you hook thousands of them together, you get a polymer. In nature, polymers are everywhere. DNA is a polymer. Silk is a polymer. Even your fingernails are polymers. But when we talk about plastic, we're usually talking about synthetic polymers made up of hydrocarbons, mostly derived from crude oil and natural gas. The defining characteristic of plastic is right there in the name, plasticity. It comes from the Greek word plastikos, which means fit for molding. It's a material that can be shaped when it's heated, and then holds that shape when it cools down. It's the ultimate shapeshifter. It can be as hard as a helmet, or as thin and crinkly as a grocery bag. But we weren't always living in a Barbie world. For most of human history, if you wanted to make something, you had to use what was lying about. Wood, stone, metal, or parts of dead animals. And that's actually where our story begins, with a game of pool and some dead elephants. Flashback to the mid-1800s. Billiards was at the height of fashion. But there's a problem. Billiard balls were made of ivory, specifically the tusks of upper-tier elephants. As the game grew in popularity The elephant population did not. Ivory became expensive, and the supply was literally dying out. A firm in New York offered a $10,000 prize, which was a massive fortune back then, to anyone who could invent a substitute for ivory. Enter John Wesley Hyatt. In 1869, he treated cellulose, derived from cotton fiber, with camphor. He created celluloid. It was revolutionary, but it wasn't perfect. It was famously flammable, meaning if you hit a billiard ball too hard, it could literally explode. But it was the beginning. Suddenly, we didn't need to kill an elephant to make a comb or a button. Plastic was actually marketed as the savior of nature, which, looking back at it now, is what we call foreshadowing in the writing business. Then came the heavy hitter, 1907. Leo Baekeland, a Belgian chemist living in New York, was trying to find a replacement for shellac, a resin made from the secretions of the Asian lac bug. Baekeland combined phenol and formaldehyde and created Bakelite. Bakelite was the world's first fully synthetic plastic. It contained no molecules found in nature. It was an incredible insulator. It didn't burn, it didn't melt once it was set, and you could mold it into almost anything. It was marketed as the material of 1,000 uses. Suddenly, the floodgates were opened. We got neoprene, nylon, plexiglass. By the time World War II rolled around, plastic was a strategic necessity. It was used for parachutes, cockpit canopies, and even components of the atomic bomb. When the war ended, the massive factories built to churn out plastics for the military didn't just shut down. They needed a new customer, and that new customer was you, or well, your grandparents. The 1950s and 60s were the golden age of plastic. This was the era of the Tupperware party, the era of disposability. Before plastic, if you broke a glass bottle, you cleaned it up and felt bad. If you had a wooden crate, you kept it for 30 years. But plastic was so cheap to produce that the industry leaders began to preach a new gospel: the future in the trash can. They told consumers they didn't need to wash things anymore. They just use it once and toss it. It was the ultimate luxury. The luxury of never having to do the dishes again. That sounds good, doesn't it? Fast forward to today, and plastic is the backbone of the modern world. Why do we use it so much? Because it's a miracle material, whether we like it or not. First, it's incredibly light. If we replaced all the plastic packing with glass or metal, the weight of our cargo would skyrocket. Every truck, ship, and plane would need significantly more fuel, which would actually increase carbon emissions. Second, it's durable. It doesn't rust like iron, and it doesn't rot like wood, and it doesn't shatter like glass. In a medical setting, plastic is a lifesaver. Think of sterile syringes, IV bags, and heart valves. Without plastic, modern medicine would basically revert to the 19th century. Lots of leeches and prayers. Third, it's cheap. Like, stupidly cheap. It allows us to mass produce everything from cheap toys to protective gear, making life more affordable for billions of people. But as the saying goes, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and the bill for our 70-year plastic party has finally arrived. The very thing that makes plastic great, the fact it doesn't rot, is exactly what makes it an environmental nightmare. Nature doesn't know how to eat plastic. If a wooden chair ends up in the woods, fungi and bacteria break it down in a few years. If a plastic chair ends up in the woods, it'll still be there when your great-great-grandchildren are questioning your life choices. Since the 1950s, humans have produced over 8 billion metric tons of plastic. Most of that still exists in some form. We've all seen the images of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch or the turtles caught in six-pack rings. But the problem is actually much smaller and much scarier: microplastics. Plastic doesn't biodegrade, it photodegrades. Sunlight and waves break it down into smaller and smaller pieces until they are microscopic. These particles are everywhere. They're in the rain, they're in the soil, and they've been found at the bottom of the Mariana Trench and at the peak of Mount Everest. We are currently breathing, eating, and drinking about a credit card's worth of plastic every single week. Now, we don't fully know what this does to the human body yet. We're essentially the lab rats in a global experiment we didn't sign up for. And let's talk about recycling. We were told for decades that if we just put our plastic in the blue bin, everything would be fine. But here's the dirty little secret. Only about 9% of all plastic ever made has been recycled. Plastic isn't like aluminium, or aluminum for my American friends. You can melt an aluminium can and make a new one forever. But every time you melt plastic, the polymer chains shorten, the quality goes down. A plastic bottle doesn't become another plastic bottle, it becomes a park bench. You can't recycle a park bench. Eventually it all ends up in a landfill or the ocean. So what now? Are we doomed to live on a planet that's wrapped in saran wrap? Not necessarily. The future of plastic is currently being written in labs around the world. We're seeing the rise of bioplastics, materials made from corn, seaweed, or even mushrooms that actually do biodegrade. But what about the plastics that already exist? Scientists have discovered plastic-eating enzymes and bacteria that can break down PET, the stuff in water bottles, in a matter of days. We're also looking at chemical recycling, where we break the plastic back down to its original oil-like state, so that it can be rebuilt perfectly over and over, creating a true circular economy. But technology alone won't fix it. The real shift has to be cultural. We have to move away from the disposable mindset that the 1950s sold us. We have to treat plastic not as trash, but as a valuable, high-performance material that's too precious to be used just once and thrown away. Plastic isn't the villain of the story, it's just a tool. A very, very permanent tool that we've been using like a paper napkin. The challenge of the 21st century isn't just about making better plastic, it's about being better humans with the plastics we have, because the material of 1,000 uses is going to be with us for thousands of years. We might as well figure out how to live with it. Thanks for watching. If you found this informative, or if it just made you look at your toothbrush with a new sense of dread, give us a like and hit that subscribe button. What should we dive into next? The history of salt? The science of sleep? The mystery of why your shoelaces always come undone at the worst possible moment? Let us know in the comments below. I'm off to go find a glass water bottle. See you next time. Hello curious minds, and welcome back to What Is, where we peel back the layers of the universe one fascinating topic at a time. Today we're diving into the molten heart of humanity's obsession, a shimmering constant that has driven empires, launched expeditions, and adorned the mightiest and the wealthiest for millennia. We are talking, of course, about gold. Just what is this lustrous element? And why, in a world full of dazzling minerals and useful metals, has gold held such an unparalleled, almost mythological grip on our collective consciousness for thousands of years? Grab your pickaxe, or perhaps just a comfy chair, because we're about to strike it rich with knowledge. Let's start with the basics. What exactly are we dealing with here? Gold, or Au on the periodic table, derived from the Latin word aurum, meaning shining dawn, is a chemical element with the atomic number 79. It's a dense, soft, malleable, and ductile metal. Now those might sound like textbook buzzwords, but let's break down what they mean for gold's enduring appeal. First, its color, the unmistakable warm metallic yellow. Almost every other pure metal is silvery white or grey. Gold stands out in a crowd, demanding attention. It's literally the golden child of the metallic family, and it shines. It reflects light beautifully, which is why it grabs the eye even in its raw, unrefined state, glimmering enticingly from riverbeds or rock veins. It's not just that it's pretty. Gold is incredibly malleable, meaning it can be hammered into incredibly thin sheets without cracking. We're talking about gold leaf so thin that a single gram can be flattened into a sheet of almost a square meter in size, transparent enough to let green light through. Imagine that. You could essentially wrap a small car in gold foil using just a fraction of an ounce. Similarly, it's ductile, meaning it can be drawn into incredibly fine wires. A single ounce of gold can be stretched into a wire 5 miles long. That's like making a necklace that could span a small town. Try doing that with, say, a brick. Good luck. Or even with an iron bar. It would snap before you even got close. Perhaps its most crucial property, though, is its inertness. In less scientific terms, gold is lazy. Extremely lazy. It doesn't want to react to much of anything. It won't tarnish, it won't rust, it won't corrode. You can bury it for 2,000 years, dig it up, dust it off, and it looks just as brilliant as the day it was hammered into a royal diadem. This resistance to decay is why ancient artifacts unearthed today often look like they were just made yesterday. While iron tools have long since dissolved into rust and silver has turned dark with tarnish. It's the ultimate time capsule material, preserving its beauty and form across millennia. It's like the immortal superhero of metals, utterly unfazed by the ravages of time and the elements, just waiting patiently to be discovered and admired. It's those combined qualities, its beauty, its workability, and its indestructible nature, that set the stage for its incredible journey through human history. Our journey with gold begins not in a modern bank vault, but in the sun-drenched sands of ancient Egypt around 3000 BCE. The Egyptians were utterly captivated by gold, believing it to be the flesh of the gods, particularly the sun god Ra. This wasn't just a pretty accessory, it was imbued with a spiritual significance, a connection to the divine, a promise of immortality. Pharaohs were literally buried in it, not just with it. Think of Tutankhamun's death mask, a solid gold portrait of a boy king, weighing over 22 pounds. That's like wearing 22 bags of sugar on your face for eternity. Talk about a statement piece. And it still gleams today, centuries after its creation, a testament to the gold's timeless nature. And on a personal note, I have seen the mask twice, once as a child when it was touring the UK, and again in my 30s while I was living in Cairo, and it is beautiful and still gleams. From Egypt, gold's allure spread like wildfire. The Sumerians in Mesopotamia crafted exquisite gold jewelry and ritual objects. The Indus Valley civilization around the same time were also using gold extensively, fashioning intricate beads and ornaments. It wasn't about currency yet. It was about status, power, and divinity. If you had gold, you were either a god, a king, a priest, or someone very important to a god or king. It marked you as exceptional, set you apart from the earthly masses. Fast forward to the Roman Empire, and gold's role began to expand. While still a symbol of imperial power and wealth, gracing the emperor's robe and triumphal arches, it also became intensely practical. The Romans minted gold coins like the aureus, which helped fuel their vast economy and military machine. Imagine being a Roman soldier and getting paid in actual gold. That's a serious bonus, and an easy way to store your earnings. But even then, its scarcity meant it was primarily used for large transactions and the very wealthy. The average citizen probably saw more copper and silver in their daily lives. But the story of gold isn't just about the old world. Across the oceans in the Americas, civilizations like the Aztecs and the Incas also revered gold. They called it the sweat of the sun and the tears of the moon. incorporating it into elaborate religious ceremonies, stunning jewelry, and incredible art. They saw its spiritual value, its connection with the cosmos. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, led by figures like Cortés and Purrazzo, they weren't interested in the spiritual significance. They saw only its monetary value, its potential to enrich their coffers and fund European wars. The sheer scale of gold plundered fundamentally altered the global economy and tragically decimated indigenous cultures. It was a stark, brutal reminder of gold's seductive and often destructive power, proving that what one culture held sacred, another could see merely as commodity. Then came the great gold rushes of the 19th century: California, Australia, the Klondike. These weren't quiet affairs. These were seismic shifts in human migration, driven by the frantic and often desperate hope of striking it rich. Thousands and then hundreds of thousands of people dropping everything, their farms, their families, their sensible careers, to endure unimaginable hardships in pursuit of a glittering nugget. Imagine queuing for weeks in frozen temperatures, then digging through frozen earth with rudimentary tools, all for the chance of finding a tiny piece of metal. It's absurd, it's inspiring, and it's a testament to gold's hold over the human psyche. The gold rushes reshaped continents, built cities overnight, filled frontier towns with a chaotic mix of dreamers and scoundrels, and ultimately paved way for gold's most significant historical role, the foundation of our global financial system. So how did this beautiful shiny metal transform from divine artifact to the bedrock of international finance? The answer lies in its unique combination of properties: scarcity, durability, divisibility, uniformity, and high value to weight ratio. These aren't just technical terms, they're the very principles that make something good money. For millennia, people used various commodities as money: seashells, salt, cattle, even large stone wheels in some Pacific islands. The problem? Most of these were perishable, hard to transport, inconsistent in value, or difficult to divide. Try carrying a cow to pray for your groceries, or hoping that your salt doesn't dissolve in the rain, or figuring out how to give change for a giant stone wheel. Not exactly convenient, scalable, or reliable. Gold, however, solved these problems with elegant simplicity. It's rare enough to be valuable, but not so rare to be unusable. It doesn't corrode, so it can last forever, maintaining its intrinsic value. It can be melted down and recast into uniform coins or bars, ensuring consistency and making counterfeiting difficult. It's easily divisible into smaller units without losing value. You can cut a gold bar in half, and you have two halves worth half the original, not a pile of worthless dust. And critically, a small amount of gold holds a lot of value, making it highly portable. You can carry significant amounts of wealth in a small pouch versus, say, a whole cart of silver. It was, in essence, the perfect physical money. This led to the widespread adoption of gold coinage. Governments guaranteed the weight and purity of their gold coins, building trust in their currency. But the real game changer was the gold standard. Imagine a world where every dollar, every pound, every franc was directly backed by a specific amount of gold held in a central bank's vault. That's what the gold standard was, primarily from the late 19th century until the early 20th century. National currencies were convertible into gold at fixed prices. You could literally walk into a bank and exchange your paper money for physical gold. This system offered stability. It prevented governments from printing endless amounts of money because they were limited by their gold reserves. This meant inflation was kept in check. It fostered international trade, as exchange rates were fixed. You knew exactly how much gold your dollar would buy, and how much gold that French franc was worth. It was like a global financial GPS system, powered by a gleaming yellow metal, providing a universal measure of value. However, The gold standard wasn't without its flaws. It restricted economic growth during periods of gold scarcity. If you couldn't find more gold, you couldn't expand your money supply, even if the economy really needed it. It also severely constrained a government's ability to respond to an economic crisis, like the Great Depression, which we already have a video on if you want to know more about this period, linked above. If you couldn't print more money or devalue your currency, how could you stimulate the economy or protect your industries? It was like trying to run a marathon with your shoelaces tied together by a gold chain. Stable, yes, but inflexible. Post-World War II, the Bretton Woods system attempted a modified gold standard, where only the US dollar was directly convertible to gold, and other currencies were pegged to the dollar. For a while, this offered a degree of stability and helped rebuild a war-torn world. But even that eventually collapsed in 1971, when President Nixon closed the gold window, ending the dollar's convertibility to gold. This marked the official end of gold as a direct basis for most modern currencies. Today, currencies are fiat money. Their value is derived from a government decree of public trust, not a tangible commodity. Yet gold remains a critical asset. Central banks worldwide still hold vast reserves of gold, not to back their currencies directly, but as a store of value, a hedge against inflation, and a safe haven asset during times of economic or political uncertainty. It's the ultimate financial emergency kit. Always there, always valuable, just in case everything else goes sideways. Governments might not print money based on gold anymore, but they still respect its power. They know, just like the ancient Egyptians, that some things are simply timeless. Beyond its role in finance, gold's status as a precious metal is perhaps its most visible and universally understood identity. When you think of a precious metal, gold is almost certainly the first thing that springs to mind, and for good reason. Its intrinsic beauty, its rarity, its resistance to corrosion make it the ultimate material for adornment and artistry, a luxury truly worth its price tag. Jewelry, of course, is the most obvious application. From delicate earrings to statement necklaces, from engagement rings that symbolize eternal love to royal crowns that signify absolute power, gold has been the metal of choice for personal adornment for thousands of years. Its warm luster complements every skin tone, and its malleability allows for artisans to craft incredibly intricate designs from filigree to detailed engravings. The purity of gold in jewelry is measured in carats, 24 carat being pure gold, 18 carat meaning 18 parts gold, 6 parts another metal for strength, and so on. It's a system that has served jewelers and customers for centuries, ensuring you know exactly what you're getting, or perhaps more importantly, what you're giving. Imagine proposing with a ring made of copper that would turn green on your loved one's finger after a few weeks. Not quite the eternal symbol, is it? Gold, on the other hand, promises beauty that lasts a lifetime and beyond. But gold's artistic uses extend far beyond personal adornment. Think of the legendary golden statues of antiquity, often lost to time, but their legends endure. Think of the dazzling mosaics in the Byzantine churches, where tiny pieces of gold leaf, embedded in glass, catch and reflect the light, creating an otherworldly glow that seems to emanate from within. Or the intricate gilding found in palaces and cathedrals across Europe and Asia, where a whisper-thin layer of gold transforms mundane wood or plaster into something heavenly, giving the illusion of solid gold without the prohibitive weight or cost. It elevates the ordinary, turning craftsmanship into high art, a Midas touch. And then there's its symbolic power. A gold medal in the Olympics signifies the pinnacle of athletic achievement, the best of the best. A solid gold Oscar statue embodies cinematic excellence, the ultimate recognition in film. Giving someone a gold watch for retirement isn't just telling time, it's about acknowledging a lifetime of dedication and celebrating success. Gold is universally understood as a symbol of status, luxury, and accomplishment. It speaks a language that transcends cultures and centuries, conveying prestige and success without uttering a single word. It says, you made it, you're special, you're worth your weight in, well, gold. It's not just about showing off either. Gold often represents enduring value and heritage. Heirlooms passed down through generations, a grandmother's locket, a family signet ring, are frequently made of gold precisely because it lasts. It doesn't tarnish, it doesn't degrade, it retains its beauty and value, weathering the storms of time to become a tangible link to the past, a physical connection to those who came before. It's a metal that understands the concept of legacy, acting as a silent storyteller across the ages. Now, if you thought gold was just for kings, rappers, and investment portfolios, prepare to have your mind blown. While its aesthetic and monetary value are undeniable, a silent revolution has been taking place, leveraging gold's unique properties in the most unexpected places, the cutting-edge worlds of technology and science. Gold isn't just pretty, it's incredibly useful, often in ways you'd never imagine, driving innovation from the micro to the macro level. Let's start with electronics. Your smartphone, your laptop, your GPS device, even the satellites orbiting Earth, they all contain tiny amounts of gold. Why? Because gold is an exceptional conductor of electricity, and crucially, it doesn't corrode. Imagine the hundreds of tiny electrical contacts inside your phone. If they were made of copper, they'd eventually tarnish and fail, turning your expensive device into a very shiny paperweight. But gold ensures reliable, corrosion-free connections, even in humid environments or over decades of use. It allows for smaller, faster, and more efficient components to be built. So the next time your phone seamlessly connects to a network or processes information at lightning speed, remember that's a microscopic amount of gold doing the heavy lifting, working tirelessly behind the scenes, utterly unappreciated. It's like the unsung hero of the digital age, quietly making everything work while taking no credit. In the medical field, gold's inertness and biocompatibility, meaning it typically doesn't react negatively with living tissue, makes it invaluable. Historically, gold was used in dentistry for fillings and crowns, thanks to its durability, non-toxicity, and aesthetic appeal. While composite materials are more common today, gold still has its place, especially for long-lasting, high-quality restorations. More excitingly, researchers are exploring the use of gold nanoparticles. Gold particles so tiny they're measured in billionths of a meter, for groundbreaking medical applications. These nanoparticles can act as tiny, targeted delivery systems for drugs, precisely bringing medication to cancerous cells while minimizing harm to healthy tissue. They are also being developed for advanced diagnostic tools, helping to detect diseases earlier, and even as agents in photothermal therapy, where they can absorb light and generate heat to destroy tumors. Imagine gold not just as a symbol of health and vitality, but actively creating it within the human body. And then there's aerospace. You've seen those shimmering gold visors on astronaut helmets. That's not a fashion statement. It's an ultra-thin layer of gold that reflects harmful infrared radiation and ultraviolet light, protecting the astronaut's eyes and face from the harsh glare of unfiltered sunlight in space. Gold is also used as a coating on critical spacecraft components and satellites to regulate temperature and maintain the integrity of sensitive instruments, preventing them from overheating or freezing in the extreme thermal fluctuations of space. Its reflective properties are crucial for shielding against both the sun's intense heat and the frigid cold of deep space. Without gold, our space exploration efforts would be significantly more challenging and potentially much more dangerous. It's literally helping us reach for the stars, keep our explorers safe, and our instruments functioning. Even in the realm of high-precision scientific instruments, gold plays a vital role. In electron microscopy, for example, samples are often coated with a minuscule layer of gold to enhance conductivity and improve image quality, allowing scientists to see the world at an atomic level. In quantum computing, researchers are exploring gold's properties at an atomic scale to create the next generation of super powerful computers, harnessing its unique quantum behaviors. From the very small to the very vast, from the inner workings of your phone to the outer reaches of the cosmos, gold demonstrates a versatility that beggars belief. It's a workhorse dressed in a tuxedo, capable of everything from powering your phone to fighting cancer. Who knew this ancient metal had such a modern secret life? So we've journeyed through the millennia of gold's history, from divine artifact to financial bedrock, from cherished adornment to indispensable technological component. But what about the future? Does gold retain its luster in an increasingly digital and potentially post-physical world? The answer, unequivocally, is yes. Economically, gold's role as a safe haven and store of value is unlikely to diminish. In an era of volatile markets, geopolitical instability, and inflation concerns, gold's fundamental properties, its scarcity, its inherent value, and its resistance to inflationary pressures make it an attractive asset. While cryptocurrencies offer a new digital alternative, gold's thousands of years of proven stability and tangibility give it a psychological edge that digital assets have yet to fully earn. It's the old guard, reliably standing tall amidst the new volatile challenges. People still trust gold when they trust little else. It's the financial comfort blanket of the global economy, providing a grounding force in uncertain times. Technologically, the demand for gold is only set to increase. As our devices become smaller, faster, more interconnected, the need for reliable, corrosion-resistant, and highly conductive materials like gold will continue to grow. We're not just talking about smartphones. Think about the Internet of Things, advanced robotics, artificial intelligence infrastructure, and the ever-expanding universe of medical devices. Each iteration, each innovation, quietly demands more of this precious yellow metal. The gold in your next smart device might be so minuscule you can't even see it, but its presence will absolutely be vital for its performance and longevity. And speaking of the future, what about expanding our horizons beyond Earth? The concept of asteroid mining, once the stuff of science fiction, is becoming a serious area of research. Some asteroids are believed to contain staggering amounts of precious metals, including gold, potentially enough to flood Earth's markets for centuries. While the engineering and economic challenges are immense, the political implications are complex. A future where gold is mined from the asteroid belt is not entirely out of the question. Imagine a future where fortunes aren't made in dusty riverbeds, but in the sterile vacuum of space. That's a serious upgrade to the gold rush narrative, a cosmic twist to humanity's oldest treasure hunt. Could we ever synthesize gold? Theoretically, yes. You could, in principle, transmute other elements into gold using nuclear reactions, perhaps in a particle accelerator. However, the energy required and the costs involved are so astronomically high that it would be vastly more expensive than just digging it out of the ground. So for the foreseeable future, gold will remain a naturally occurring finite resource, ensuring its scarcity and thus its enduring value. No one is going to accidentally stumble upon a gold making machine in their garage anytime soon, much to the chagrin of aspiring alchemists everywhere. From the dawn of civilization to the far reaches of space, from the humblest piece of jewelry to the most advanced medical technology, gold has constantly proven its worth. It adapts, it endures, it continues to captivate. Its journey is a testament to its unique physical properties and the human capacity for wonder, acquisition, and innovation. It truly is the metal that time forgot to forget. So there you have it, the glittering, complex, and utterly captivating story of gold. From being the flesh of the gods in ancient Egypt to the silent guardian of your smartphone circuits, gold has truly earned its place as one of the most remarkable elements on our planet, and perhaps beyond. We hope you enjoyed unearthing these golden nuggets of information with us today. If you learned something new, or just appreciate the timeless sparkle of gold, please hit that like button, subscribe to What Is for more deep dives, and let us know in the comments what's the most surprising thing you learned about gold today. Or perhaps, what other elements or mysteries should we explore next? Your insights are as precious as, well, you know. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, and see you next time. Welcome back to What Is, the channel where we take the world's most complicated, boring, or terrifying concepts and break them down until they make sense. Today we're talking about the one thing that connects a Roman gladiator, a medieval peasant, and a modern-day software engineer in a shared bond of collective groaning. We're talking about tax. Benjamin Franklin once famously wrote that in this world, nothing is certain except for death and taxes. And while medical science is working hard on the death part, nobody has found a cure for the taxes part yet. In this video, we're going to look at what tax actually is, where it came from, and why we bother paying it, and how different countries around the world try, and sometimes fail, to make the process make sense. So grab a coffee, check your deductions, and let's dive in. First, the basics. What is the definition of tax? In the simplest terms, a tax is a mandatory financial charge or some other type of levy imposed on a taxpayer by a governmental organization in order to fund government spending and various public expenditures. The key word there is mandatory. If you stop giving money to your local animal shelter, they send you a sad calendar with puppies on it. If you stop giving money to the government, they send you a man in a suit with a badge and a very firm set of handcuffs. Taxes come in two flavors, direct and indirect. Direct taxes are paid by the person or the organization directly to the government. Think income tax or corporate tax. Indirect taxes are collected by an intermediary, like a store, from the person who bears the ultimate economic burden. When you buy a chocolate bar and pay sales tax, or VAT, you're paying the indirect tax. You're giving the money to the store. The store is then essentially the government's very unpaid, very grumpy middleman. But where did this idea come from? Did some ancient king just wake up one day and decide he wanted 10% of everyone's wheat? Well, pretty much yeah. History shows that the first known system of taxation was in ancient Egypt, around 3000 to 2800 BC. The pharaoh would conduct a biannual tour of the kingdom, collecting a share of the harvest. If you didn't have grain, you paid in labor. This was called corvée labor. Basically, you paid your taxes by spending a few months of the year building pyramids or digging canals. It's hard to complain about your modern tax software when you realize the alternative was hauling limestone blocks under desert sun. The Greeks were a bit more refined about it. They mostly taxed in times of war. This was called eisphora. Once the war was over, the tax was supposed to stop. This is a recurring theme in history. Governments promising that a tax is just for now. Spoiler alert, it's rarely just for now. Then came the Romans. The Romans were the CEOs of taxations. They had customs duties, land taxes, even a tax on the sale of slaves. They also had a system called tax farming. The government would auction off the right to collect taxes in a certain region to the highest bidder. That person, the publican, would then go into the region and squeeze the locals for as much as possible, keeping the surplus as profit. As you can imagine, this made tax collectors about as popular as a plague of locusts. Falling into the Middle Ages, we see the rise of Dingeld, a tax specifically raised to pay off Viking raiders so they wouldn't burn your village down. It was essentially state-sponsored protection money. As we move into the 17th and the 18th centuries, governments got creative. In 1696, England introduced the window tax. This was a tax based on how many windows your house had. The logic was that rich people had bigger houses with more windows. The result? People started bricking up their windows to save money. If you've ever walked through London or Edinburgh and seen old buildings with bricked up window frames, you're looking at a 300-year-old tax protest. But the big one, the one we all love to hate, is income tax. Believe it or not, income tax is a relatively modern invention. In Britain, it was introduced by William Pitt the Younger in 1799 to pay for weapons and ships to fight Napoleon. He promised it would be temporary. Napoleon was defeated in 1815, and the tax was repealed in 1816, and everyone cheered. Then in 1842, it was brought back. It's been temporary ever since. In the United States, the journey was even more dramatic. The country was basically founded on an anti-tax sentiment. No taxation without representation was the catchphrase of the American Revolution. The early US government mostly funded itself through tariffs on imported goods. It wasn't until the Civil War that the first federal income tax was created. It was repealed, then challenged in Supreme Court, and finally, in 1913, the 16th Amendment was ratified, making federal income tax a permanent fixture of American life. So we know it's mandatory, and we know it's old, but what is it actually used for? And why don't we just keep our money? Imagine for a second that there were no taxes. You get to keep every cent of your paycheck. Great, right? Except you walk out your front door and realize there's no pavement. There's just mud track, because roads are expensive and no single person wants to pay for the one outside their house. You try to drive to work, but there are no traffic lights, no rules, because there's no Department of Transportation. If your house catches fire, you have to negotiate a price with a private fire brigade while your curtains are melting. If you want to know if your food is safe to eat, you have to hire your own chemist to test your milk for lead, because there's no Food and Drug Administration. Taxes fund public goods. These are things that are non-excludable and non-rivalrous. That's a fancy way of saying, if one person uses it, it doesn't stop someone else from using it, and it's impossible to prevent people from using it once it exists. National defense is a classic example. You can't protect just the people who paid for the army protects the whole border. Taxes pay for the big three. Infrastructure, that's roads, bridges, airports, and water systems. Protection, that's the police, fire departments, and the military. And social services, education, healthcare, and support for the elderly or unemployed. Depending on where you live, social services might be a tiny line item or the biggest chunk of the pie. In many European countries, your taxes pay for your healthcare from birth to death. In the US, your taxes pay for a massive military and a complex web of social security, but you're still largely on the hook for your own doctor's bills. Taxes are also used for Pigovian purposes, named after the economist Arthur Pigou. These taxes are designed to discourage bad behavior. Think of the taxes on cigarettes, alcohol, or carbon emissions. The government isn't just looking for your money, they're trying to make it too expensive for you to do things that hurt society, or your own lungs. Now let's talk about the different systems, because how you pay depends entirely on which flag is flying over your local post office. Let's start with the United States. The US system is famous for its complexity. It uses a progressive tax system, which means the more you earn, the higher percentage of tax you pay. The rate moves in brackets. You might pay 10% on your first few $1,000s, then 12 in the next chunk, all the way up to 37 for the ultra-wealthy. But the weirdest part of the US system isn't the rate, it's the paperwork. In most developed nations, the government tracks how much you earn and just sends you a bill or takes it out of your check. In the US, the government knows exactly how much you owe, but they make you guess. You have to fill out a 1040 form, calculate your own deductions, and if you get it wrong, even by accident, the IRS can fine you. Why? As well as being profitable for the government, companies that sell tax prep software spend millions of dollars lobbying the government to keep the system complicated. It's a uniquely American brand of frustration. Then we have the United Kingdom. The UK uses a system called PAYE, P-A-Y-E, or pay as you earn. If you're an employee, your boss takes the tax out of your paycheck before it even hits your bank account. For the average person, filling in a tax return isn't something you ever have to do. The government, HMRC, just handles it. The exception is for the self-employed. The UK also has VAT, or Value Added Tax. It's currently at 20% on most goods and services. This is baked into the price you see on the shelf. If a sandwich says it's going to cost £5, it costs £5. In the US, you go to the register and the $5 sandwich suddenly becomes $5.37. The UK system is much more what you see is what you get, even if what you're getting is a 20% haircut on your spending money. Then there are the Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland. These countries have some of the highest tax rates in the world. In Denmark, the top income tax rate can hit over 50%. To an American, this sounds like a dystopian nightmare. But in exchange, the citizens get free university, free healthcare, high-quality childcare, and a very strong social safety net. Year after year, these countries top the lists of the happiest people on Earth. It turns out, people don't mind paying taxes if they feel like they're actually getting their money's worth. On the total opposite end of the spectrum, we have tax havens. Places like the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, or Monaco. These places often have 0% income tax. They attract the ultra-wealthy and the massive corporations who want to shield their money. This leads to the controversial world of tax avoidance versus tax evasion. Tax avoidance is legal. It's using the rules to pay as little as possible, like putting money in a retirement account. Tax evasion is illegal. That's lying about how much you made or hiding money away in a secret basement in Switzerland. As the old saying goes, the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion is the thickness of a prison wall. We should also mention the flat tax systems used in places like Estonia or several countries in Eastern Europe. Everyone pays the same percentage, regardless of whether they're a billionaire or a barista. It's simple, it fits on a postcard, but critics argue it's unfair because a 20% tax hurts a poor person much more than it hurts a rich person. So why is it all so messy? Why can't we just have one system that works? Because tax isn't just about math. It's about philosophy. It's about the ultimate expression of a country's values. When the government sets a tax policy, they're answering the biggest question in politics. What do we owe each other? Should the rich support the poor? Should we subsidize green energy? Should we tax sugar to make people healthier? Every time a tax law changes, it's a reflection of what that society thinks is important at that specific moment in time. And yes, the system is full of loopholes and frustrations. There's the pink tax, where products marketed to women are often more expensive and taxed differently. Then there are tampon taxes, where basic hygiene products are taxed as luxury items, while things like helicopters or private jets sometimes get tax breaks. There's the corporate tax debate, where some of the biggest companies in the world pay $0 in federal taxes because they moved their intellectual property to a shell company in a tropical island they've never actually visited. It's easy to get cynical. It's easy to look at your paycheck and see the missing 25% and feel like you've been robbed. But then you look at the bridge you drove across. You look at the school where your kids are learning to read. You look at the fact that when you dial 911 or 999, someone actually picks up the phone. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. once said, "Taxes are what we pay for a civilized society. Without them, we aren't a society. We're just a bunch of individuals sitting in the dark, surrounded by mud, trying to figure out how to build a road." As we look to the future, the world of tax is changing. We're seeing debates around robot taxes. If a machine takes a human's job, should that machine's owner pay the income tax that the person would have generated? We're seeing a push for global minimum corporate tax, so that companies can't play countries against each other in a race to the bottom. Whatever happens, you can be sure of two things. One, you will continue to pay them, and two, you will continue to complain about them. It's the circle of life. That's our deep dive into the world of taxes. If you made it this far, congratulations. You now know more about the history of the IRS and the window tax than 99% of the population. If you enjoyed this video, please do us a favor, hit that like button. It's a totally free way to support the channel, and unlike the government, we won't audit you if you don't do it. Don't forget to subscribe to What Is for more deep dives into the things that run our world. Do you have weird taxes in your country? Or is there a topic you want us to cover next? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, keep your receipts. You never know when you'll need them. See you in the next one. Welcome, curious minds, to What Is, where we peel back the layers of the everyday and uncover the extraordinary hidden within. Today we're tackling something so fundamental, so ubiquitous, you probably haven't given it a second thought. Pun absolutely intended. Look around you. Chances are there's one nearby, silently, relentlessly ticking away. Or perhaps a glowing display, digits ceaselessly advancing. We are, of course, talking about the humble, yet utterly indispensable, clock. But what is a clock really? At its most basic, a clock is a device designed to measure, keep, and indicate time. Simple, right? But like many simple definitions, it barely scratches the surface of its profound complexity and impact. Think of it as humanity's relentless quest for order in the face of an ever-flowing, intangible dimension. From the grand, ornate grandfather clock in the dusty hallway, with its rhythmic swing and sonorous chimes, to the sleek, silent digital display on your smartphone, or the invisible, hyper-accurate atomic clocks governing our GPS systems. They all share that singular, overriding purpose. They are our navigators through the fourth dimension, our steadfast companions on the journey of existence. They take the abstract concept of time and make it concrete, measurable, and shareable. Without them, we'd be, well, late, permanently, and probably confused. Very, very confused. Now this brings us to a more intriguing question. Why is time measured as it is? 24 hours in a day, 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute. These numbers feel so natural, so self-evident, that it's easy to assume there's some kind of universal constant. But they're not. They are, in fact, a fascinating legacy of ancient civilizations, arbitrary divisions that stuck, much like that catchy jingle from a commercial you heard 20 years ago. Our initial units of time, the day, the year, are purely astronomical. The day, that's one full rotation of our magnificent blue marble on its axis. The year, that's one complete grand orbital waltz around our fiery sun. And the month? Well, that was initially tracked by the phases of the moon, although modern calendar months are a bit less strict about aligning perfectly with the lunar cycles. much to the chagrin of werewolves everywhere. But then came the finer divisions. The Babylonians, those brilliant stargazers and mathematicians from Mesopotamia, gave us the 60. Their sexagesimal, or base 60 number system was incredibly sophisticated for astronomy and geometry. It made perfect sense to them to divide a circle into 360 degrees, and a day into smaller segments based on multiples of 60. Why 60? It's a nicely divisible number having factors of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, and 60. Very convenient for calculations. The Egyptians, not to be outdone, divided their day into 24 hours, 12 for daylight, 12 for night. They probably didn't have much of a choice, given the whole sun being up, then down thing. Over time, these two systems merged and solidified, giving us the 24-hour day made up of 60-minute hours, which themselves are made up of 60-second minutes. The need for accurate timekeeping wasn't just for philosophical musings, it was practical. Imagine trying to coordinate a grand army, or sail a ship across an ocean, or even just meet a friend for a drink, without standardizing the way to measure time. Chaos. Utter, delightful, uncoordinated chaos. So these ancient, seemingly arbitrary divisions became the bedrock of our modern temporal framework, a testament to human ingenuity and the stubborn persistence of good ideas, or at least ideas that worked well enough. So with the why somewhat settled, let's journey back to the very origins of these time-telling marvels. Before gears and springs, before electricity and oscillating crystals, how did our ancestors keep track of time? Well, they looked up, way up. The earliest clocks weren't mechanisms at all, but rather observations of natural phenomena. The sun, of course, was the original timekeeper. Early humans tracked the sun's position across the sky, noting the shifting length and direction of shadows. This led to the creation of the sundial, one of humanity's first true time-measuring instruments. Essentially, it's a stick, or a gnomon, stuck into the ground, casting a shadow that moves as the sun traverses its arc. Simple, elegant, and surprisingly accurate, provided it was daytime, not cloudy, and you weren't trying to tell the time indoors. Which, let's be honest, those are some pretty significant caveats. Sorry I'm late, the sun had a prior engagement. Hardly an excuse that holds up today. To conquer the night and those inconvenient cloudy days, humanity turned to other elements. Water clocks, or clepsydras, emerged around 1500 BCE in Egypt. These ingenious devices measured the time by regulating the flow of water. Some involved a pot from which water was slowly dripping, marking time as the water level dropped. Others filled with markers inside indicating the passage of hours. They were a significant leap forward, offering continuous timekeeping indoors and at night. Though I imagine ancient Egyptian custodians had to be constantly refilling them. Anyone seen the water clock guy? My meeting with Pharaoh Seti is in 2 hours and the bucket is almost empty. Beyond water, there were candle clocks, used primarily in medieval China and Japan, where markings on a candle indicated the passage of time as it burnt down. And incense clocks, also from Asia, where the calibrated stick of incense would burn, marking time by specific scents or by tiny bells attached to the falling threads. Ingenious, truly, but perhaps not ideal if you suffer from allergies or have a particularly hyperactive cat. These early inventions weren't so much about telling the precise moments as they were about measuring the duration of events, or dividing the day and night into rough segments. The idea of exact time as we know it was still a long way off. The real game changer, the invention that truly gave birth to the clock as we understand it, arrived in medieval Europe. With the rise of monastic life and the need for monks to pray at specific, consistent intervals throughout the day and night, a more reliable and precise timekeeper was desperately needed. No more guessing with sundials, no more refilling water pots. They needed something mechanical, something robust. And so, sometime in the 13th to 14th century, the mechanical clock was born. The crucial innovation? The escapement mechanism. This brilliant piece of engineering converted the continuous force of a falling weight into a controlled, oscillating motion, allowing a gear train to move forward in discrete, regular steps. Imagine a tiny brake that keeps stopping and releasing, allowing the wheels to turn just a little bit at a time. This was revolutionary. Early mechanical clocks were colossal affairs, built for church towers and public squares. They were less about showing the time on a dial, and more about announcing it with the loud, resounding bells. People didn't check their wristwatches, they simply listened for the chimes. There goes noon, time for lunch. Or maybe a slightly earlier lunch. Those medieval bells were notoriously inconsistent. Accuracy wasn't their strong suit. They could lose or gain an hour a day. But they were a vast improvement and marked the beginning of the relentless pursuit of precision. The next major leap came in the 17th century with the invention of the pendulum clock. The great Italian scientist Galileo Galilei had observed the constant swing of a chandelier in Pisa Cathedral and realized its potential for timekeeping. It was the Dutch scientist Christian Huygens who in 1656 designed and patented the first practical pendulum clock. The regular isochronous swing of the pendulum provided an incredibly stable rhythmic beat, vastly improving accuracy from hours a day to mere minutes. This precision was a revelation, transforming science, navigation, and everyday life. Suddenly, experiments could be timed more accurately, and maps could be made with greater detail. As clockmaking advanced, so did miniaturization. By the late 17th and 18th centuries, the development of spring-driven mechanisms allowed for smaller portable clocks, like the first pocket watches. These were luxury items, status symbols, signaling not just wealth, but an appreciation for punctuality. Imagine the flex, pulling out a delicate, intricate timepiece from your waistcoat. Oh yes, it's precisely tea time, darling. Do try and keep up. Perhaps one of the most heroic stories in horology is that of John Harrison, an 18th century English clockmaker who spent decades perfecting the marine chronometer. Navigators faced the terrifying problem of accurately determining longitude at sea. Having a perfectly accurate clock that could keep Greenwich Mean Time while sailing across the world was the answer. Harrison's chronometers, particularly the legendary H4, were marvels of engineering, designed to withstand the pitching and rolling of a ship, temperature changes, and humidity. It was a race against time and the elements, with a huge prize offered by the British government. Harrison, against much skepticism, eventually triumphed, forever changing maritime navigation and global trade. The Industrial Revolution in the 19th century brought mass production, making clocks accessible to everyone. Suddenly, every home, every factory, every public building needed a clock. This era also led to the standardization of time zones, a necessary development for managing complex railway schedules across vast continents. No longer could every town set its own local time based on its specific solar noon. The world needed to sync up, and the clock was the instrument of that synchronization. The 20th century saw the arrival of electric clocks, and then, in the mid-century, the extraordinary advent of the quartz clock. Utilizing the piezoelectric properties of a vibrating quartz crystal, these clocks offered an unprecedented accuracy at incredibly low cost. Suddenly, precise timekeeping was no longer a luxury, it was a commodity. Your digital watch, your microwave, your computer. Almost everything that tells time today relies on a simple, oscillating piece of quartz. But the pinnacle of timekeeping, the ultimate in accuracy, arrived with the atomic clock. Developed in the mid-20th century, these clocks measured time based on the extremely stable oscillations of atoms, typically cesium or rubidium. They are so precise that they lose or gain only 1 second in hundreds of millions of years. Atomic clocks are the invisible architects of our modern world, underpinning everything from GPS systems that guide our cars and phones to the synchronization of the internet. to the most complex scientific experiments. From a shadow on a stick to the vibration of an atom, humanity's journey to conquer time is truly astounding. The clock, therefore, is more than just a device. It's a cultural artifact, a societal cornerstone, and a philosophical mirror. Its role in culture is immense and persuasive, shaping almost every aspect of our lives. Think about how clocks organize our society. Without them, there'd be no work schedules, no school bells, no synchronized public transport. Appointments would be meaningless. Imagine trying to run a global economy without a universally agreed upon time. It would be utter pandemonium, a delightful, unquantifiable mess. The clock transformed our perception of time from an amorphous flow to a quantifiable, manageable resource. Time became money, a commodity to be saved, spent, or wasted. In art and literature, clocks have profound symbolic meanings. They often represent the march of time, life's fleeting nature, and mortality. The classic Memento Mori often features clocks or hourglasses, reminding us that our time is finite. Father Time, the iconic personification, carries a scythe and an hourglass, symbolizing both creation and destruction, the relentless passage towards the end. Clocks can also be symbols of precision, order, and scientific progress, or conversely, of anxiety and pressure. The ticking clock in a suspense film, the deadline looming. Our language is riddled with temporal metaphors thanks to clocks. Time flies, killing time, making time, racing against time, just in the nick of time. We live by these phrases, internalizing the clock's grip on our daily existence. The very concept of punctuality, arriving at an agreed upon precise moment, is a wholly cultural construct enabled by the clock. Before accurate clocks, showing up around noon was perfectly acceptable. Now, around noon can be an insult. Psychologically, the clock deeply affects us. It dictates our rhythms, our sleep cycles, our periods of work and rest. It creates a sense of urgency and sometimes a strange kind of peace. Knowing the time allows us to plan, to anticipate, to coordinate with billions of other people around the globe. It's the silent conductor of humanity's grand symphony. And of course, the clock has been a vital engine of progress itself. Without precise timekeeping, many scientific discoveries would have been impossible. Astronomy, physics, chemistry all rely on accurate measurement. The exploration of the world, the Industrial Revolution, the digital age, each was enabled, if not outright driven, by improvements in our ability to measure and manage time. From the sundial's patient shadow to the dizzying oscillations of a cesium atom, the clock is not merely a tool, it's a fundamental pillar of our civilization. So the next time you glance at your watch or check your phone for the time, take a moment. Acknowledge the incredible journey of that seemingly simple device. From crude sticks in the sand to cosmic timekeepers, the clock represents humanity's relentless pursuit of understanding, order, and control over the most elusive dimension of all. It's a testament to our ingenuity, our curiosity, and our shared, intricate dance with the passage of moments. Thank you for joining us on this temporal journey. If you've enjoyed unraveling the mystery of the clock, make sure to like this video. Leave us a comment about what is topic you'd like us to explore next. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single second of our future investigations. Until next time, keep ticking. Welcome, curious minds, to What Is, where we peel back the layers of, well, everything. Today we're tackling a concept so profound, so devastating, and yet so utterly foundational in our modern world that the very name conjures images of unimaginable power. We are talking, of course, about the nuclear weapon. What is a nuclear weapon? At its core, it's not just a bigger bomb. Oh no, it's a fundamental re-understanding of bigger. Imagine the biggest conventional bomb you know, perhaps the GBU-43/B, massive ordnance air blast, affectionately known as the mother of all bombs. It weighs over 20,000 pounds and has a yield of 11 tons of TNT. Impressive, right? Now imagine a weapon that in its infancy could pack the punch of 20,000 tons of TNT, compressed into something smaller than a car. That's what we're dealing with, and they've only gotten more potent since. A nuclear weapon doesn't rely on chemical reactions like good old-fashioned gunpowder. It taps into the very fabric of matter, exploiting the mind-boggling energy locked within the atomic nuclei. We're talking about either fission, where heavy atomic nuclei are split, or fusion, where light nuclei are forced together. Both processes release an absolute colossal amount of energy. Fission bombs are what exploded over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Fusion bombs, also known as hydrogen bombs, are far more powerful, using a fission reaction to trigger the fusion. It's like using a tiny conventional bomb to set off a slightly larger fission bomb that then ignites an even larger fusion reaction. It's a nested doll of pure, unadulterated destructive force, not your grandpa's TNT indeed. So where did this terrifying brainchild even come from? The story begins not in a bunker, but in the hallowed halls of academia, among brilliant, often eccentric physicists at the dawn of the 20th century. Einstein, Lise Meitner, Otto Hahn, Frédéric and Irene Joliot Curie. They were all busy unraveling the secrets of the atom. In 1938, the discovery of nuclear fission by Hahn and Strassmann in Germany was the crucial unlock. It was a theoretical marvel, but then a chilling realization dawned. If you could split an atom, and that splitting released other particles that could split more atoms, you could create a self-sustaining chain reaction. And a lot of energy. World War II provided the grim impetus that turned theoretical physics into terrifying reality. The fear was palpable. What if Nazi Germany, with its formidable scientific capabilities, developed such a weapon first? This existential dread galvanized the Allied powers. In 1939, a letter famously signed by Albert Einstein, though largely drafted by Leo Szilard, was sent to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, warning him of the possibility of extremely powerful bombs of a new type. This letter, along with growing intelligence, set in motion one of the most ambitious, secretive, and ethically fraught scientific endeavors in human history, the Manhattan Project. Suddenly, hundreds of thousands of people, scientists, engineers, factory workers, security personnel, were all swept into a vast, sprawling operation across the United States. Its scale was mind-boggling, its secrecy absolute. Imagine a city-sized, top-secret project dotted across remote deserts and inaccessible valleys, populated by some of the greatest scientific minds of the era, all working on a single, terrifying goal. Oppenheimer, Groves, Fermi, Teller, Feynman, a veritable who's who of physics, all under immense pressure. It was like a highly intellectual, incredibly high-stakes reality show if the grand prize was global annihilation. What could possibly go wrong? And then came the moment. July 16th, 1945. Jordana del Muerto Desert, New Mexico. The Trinity Test. The accumulation of years of frantic work, billions of dollars, and the intellectual sweat of countless brilliant minds. They built the gadget, an implosion-type weapon, similar in design to the one that would later be dropped on Nagasaki. The scientists, some huddled in bunkers miles away, others simply lying on the sand with welder's masks, waited. The countdown began, and then at 5:29 and 45 seconds AM, local time, the world changed. There was no sound at first, just an impossibly brilliant flash, brighter than 1,000 suns, illuminating the pre-dawn sky with an otherworldly glow. Then a titanic fireball erupted. expanding rapidly, scorching the desert floor into a glassy green substance now known as trinitite. Oppenheimer famously recalled the words from the Bhagavad Gita: "Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." Others described it as both terrifying and awe-inspiring, a primal force unleashed. The shockwave, when it finally arrived minutes later, was a visceral thump that reverberated through the very bones of the observers. It shattered windows 120 miles away. Scientists have made bets on the yield, some predicting a paltry few kilotons. The actual yield? Around 20 kilotons. Oops. A bit more bang than they expected. It was an unequivocal success, a terrifying testament to human ingenuity. And with that success, the world was altered. Less than a month later, that terrifying success moved from the desert testing grounds to the urban centers of the world at war. On August 6, 1945, the B-29 bomber Enola Gay dropped Little Boy, a uranium gun-type fission weapon, on the city of Hiroshima, Japan. 3 days later, on August 9th, Fat Man, a plutonium implosion-type weapon, fell on Nagasaki. The immediate effects were catastrophic. Tens of thousands of people vanished in an instant. Buildings were flattened. Concrete turned to dust. A searing thermal flash caused instant horrific burns to anyone exposed. Following the initial blast came the shockwave, then intense radiation. In the aftermath, black rain contaminated with radioactive fallout fell from the sky. The death toll mounted over weeks, months, and years as victims succumbed to radiation sickness, cancers, and other long-term health effects. The cities were reduced to rubble, and the survivors, known as hibakusha, carried physical and psychological scars that would last a lifetime. These events remain the only instances of nuclear weapons being used in warfare. Their deployment remains one of the most debated decisions in history. Proponents argue they hastens Japan's surrender, saving countless lives that would have been lost in a prolonged invasion. Critics contend that Japan was already on the verge of surrender, and that the bombings were a disproportionate act of terror, a horrifying demonstration of power. Regardless of the ethical arguments, one thing was clear: the very nature of warfare had fundamentally changed. Humanity had invented a win button that, in the wrong hands or with too much enthusiasm, could delete the entire game. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki didn't end the story. They merely opened a chilling new chapter. The world entered the nuclear age, and almost immediately the arms race began. The United States, having created the bomb, held the monopoly for a brief, nervous period. But it was only a matter of time. In 1949, the Soviet Union detonated its first atomic bomb. Then came the United Kingdom in 1952, France in 1960, and China in 1964. The nuclear club was growing, and with each new member, the global temperature seemed to rise. Early testing was often conducted above ground, in atmosphere. Bikini Atoll became practically synonymous with nuclear tests, a paradisical island chain repeatedly obliterated by mushroom clouds. Nevada test site saw countless detonations. These atmospheric tests, while dramatic, had a terrifying side effect: radioactive fallout. Invisible, odorless, and deadly. This fallout drifted across continents, contaminating air, soil, and water. Stories emerged of sailors on fishing boats hundreds of miles away, like the Japanese fishing boat Lucky Dragon 5, being showered with radioactive ash and suffering severe radiation sickness. The absurdity of doing atmospheric tests on tropical islands for science, while locals wondered why their fish glowed, was not lost on many. The environmental and health consequences became impossible to ignore. A global movement for a ban on nuclear testing grew, fueled by public fear and scientific evidence. This pressure led to the Partial Test Ban Treaty in 1963, prohibiting nuclear weapons tests in atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. Underground testing, shielded from immediate public view and theoretically contained, was still permitted. It was a step forward, but the testing continued, just out of sight. Decades later, in 1996, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, CTBT, was opened for signature, aiming for a total ban on all nuclear weapons test explosions everywhere. While it hasn't entered into force because key nations haven't ratified it, it remains a powerful international norm. But the ghost of atmospheric tests still haunt us, a stark reminder of humanity's past flirtations with uncontrolled invisible destruction. And then we get to the Cold War, a period defined by proxy wars, espionage, and the omnipresent shadow of total annihilation. This era gave us one of history's most terrifying logical doctrines: mutually assured destruction, or MAD. MAD isn't about winning a nuclear war, it's about making sure no one starts one. The premise is brutally simple. If one side launches a nuclear attack, the other side will retaliate with such overwhelming force that both the aggressor and victim will be utterly destroyed. It requires a second strike capability, meaning you must be able to absorb the first strike and still launch your own devastating counterattack. This was achieved through vast arsenals of intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, in hardened silos, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, SLBMs, hidden underneath the waves, and strategic bombers kept in constant alert. It's the ultimate, I'll scratch your eyes out if you scratch mine, playground logic, scaled up for global annihilation. The paradox of MAD is that it creates stability through sheer terror. For decades, the US and the Soviet Union stared each other down, knowing that to blink, to initiate, would mean the end of civilization as we knew it. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 brought the world to the brink of that very abyss. For 13 harrowing days, the US and Soviet Union, armed to the teeth, engaged in a terrifying standoff over Soviet nuclear missile deployment in Cuba. It was the closest humanity has ever come to full-scale nuclear war. The global equivalent of two bullies with bazookas pointing them at each other, trying to decide who blinks first. The idea of winning a nuclear war became a grim joke. The only winner would be the cockroaches. So where are we now? In a slightly less cold, but still decidedly chilly nuclear age. The original nuclear club, the United States, Russia inheriting the Soviet Union's arsenal, the United Kingdom, France and Russia are still the dominant players, often referred to as the P5, or the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. These nations are also recognized as nuclear weapons states under the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, or the NPT. But the club has expanded. India and Pakistan, geopolitical rivals, both developed and publicly tested nuclear weapons in 1998, raising fears of a regional nuclear conflict. North Korea, a notoriously unpredictable and isolated state, conducted its first nuclear test in 2006 and has continued to develop its arsenal, frequently rattling sabers with provocative missile tests. Israel is also widely believed to possess nuclear weapons, though it maintains a policy of nuclear ambiguity, neither confirming or denying its capabilities. It's the global equivalent of everyone having a bazooka, but only some people are allowed to play with them. And even then, some are playing with them loudly. The NPT, signed by most nations, aims to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons while simultaneously encouraging disarmament among existing nuclear powers. It's a delicate balance, and one that's constantly under strain. The threat of non-state actors acquiring nuclear materials or rogue states developing their own programs remains a significant concern. The irony, of course, is the attempt to prevent proliferation while the existing nuclear powers maintain and even modernize their own arsenals, which sometimes feels like trying to stop everyone else from having cake when you've already eaten yours. And what of the future? Can humanity ever truly uninvent the nuclear weapon? The genie is out of the bottle, and there's no putting it back in. The knowledge exists, etched into our collective scientific consciousness. The path forward is fraught with challenges. There's a constant tension between disarmament efforts and the modernization of existing arsenals. Some argue that nuclear weapons are an essential deterrent, preventing large-scale conventional wars between major powers. Others see them as an ongoing existential threat, susceptible to accidental launch, cyber attacks, or the actions of a single, unhinged individual. The development of smaller, more usable tactical nuclear weapons further blurs the lines, raising the terrifying prospect of their limited deployment. Will the future bring a world free from nuclear weapons, or will we continue to live under their shadow, relying on the fragile logic of MAD and the good intentions of those who control them? Humanity's incredible ability to invent something catastrophic and then spend decades trying to figure out how to put the genie back in the bottle is a testament to our perplexing nature. Future generations will surely look back and say, "You guys seriously built that thing?" and then just hope for the best? From the theoretical musings of physicists to the scorching deserts of New Mexico, from the devastation of Hiroshima to the Cold War's terrifying standoff, and into our complex present, the nuclear weapon stands as a monument to human ingenuity and human folly. It's a tool that promises both ultimate security and ultimate destruction, a paradox woven into the very fabric of our modern existence. Understanding what is a nuclear weapon isn't just about physics, it's about history, politics, ethics, and ultimately our shared responsibility for the future of this fragile, beautiful planet. If you found this exploration into the atomic age thought-provoking, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more deep dives into the what is of everything. And let us know in the comments, what do you think is the most significant consequence of the invention of the nuclear weapon? And while you're pondering the fate of humanity, why not check out one of our other videos? Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning. See you next time.